Good evening. Welcome to Hello Guitar Perspective on Inclusion. And tonight we're talking about employment for people with disabilities.
So I'm sitting in for our colleague and friend Mike Honig. I'm Julie Christensen from Center for Disabilities and Development, and CDD is one of the sponsors of the program. But our host tonight?
Yes, it's Keith Ruff. I'm an advocate for disabled rights, and I'm writing a book for doing this show. And in front of me is Dr. Reddish. He is very informed on disability education. On his left, on Paul's left, is Kelly Hood, a person from Goodwill. And tonight's subject is about all kinds of employment for people with disabilities. Now, I like to start out with your bios. Paul, can you give us a quick bio?
Well, I've just retired about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm Professor Emeritus from the College of Education and Special Education. My areas of interest are basically employment and diversity, and I did a lot of work internationally in working with people with disabilities. But in another century, and it's actually true, I was a public school teacher, a work-study teacher, where I placed students with disabilities on jobs, and I've run programs for people with disabilities.
Paul, was that done all in Iowa or back home?
Yeah, this accent is from very far eastern Iowa, from New York. I was a teacher in New York, and then as a graduate student at Indiana, I ran programs for the disabled and also worked for the State Department. Then we moved here, we thought for a couple of years, and that was 49 years ago, I think, as I can count. So it's been a good relationship and a good place for us.
Okay. Kelly, would you give us a small bio?
Absolutely. So I'm from Iowa City. I went to the university and I have a degree in sociology.
Yeah.
Out of college, I worked for Four Oaks as a youth counselor, and then I became a job coach with Goodwill, which is kind of where I first got into employment-related things with people with disabilities. And now I work with the youth services at Goodwill and the Making the Grade grant program. So I just work with mostly high school kids to help them with career exploration and job placement.
Thank you. Okay. Paul or Kelly, either one, or both. What do you see as personal barriers to work for people with disabilities? What are the barriers?
I'll start. I think one of the biggest barriers is the perception of the public about people with disabilities. I don't like any of the terminology. It's not people with disabilities. These people have abilities, and we need to change the framework. It's a medical model. It was a model designed to get people eligible to get funding. And in the process, I think we've short-suited people because everybody looks at people with disabilities and acts on that disabilities, and we need to change the framework to say, what are the abilities of all people? As an educator, I think that's the cardinal error in the schools. Only talk about the disabilities. We group them together and we talk about disability. So I think that's the place society has to begin so that people with these abilities or different abilities can become employable. They're already employable. Are they hireable?
Don't you think that kind of attitude comes with most minorities? We put a minority available on every minority.
Yeah, I do. I think people don't see people as individuals,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what we focus on. And like what Paul said, people's strengths, not their barriers. And when they hear, that this person works with Goodwill, that brings a whole different
Yes.
set of perception, and they again lose sight of that person's skills and interests and who they are as an individual.
And employers have to understand that they're not looking at a disability. They're looking at somebody with great abilities. I mean, that the largest unemployed, underemployed group in the United States are people with disabilities. What a huge energy we could tap to raise the profile of the people and of employment. They're there. Why aren't we hiring them? And I think that's really the crux of the issue.
Julie, have you any comment? Since you have a little background.
A little background in disability employment. Keith and I have talked many times in the past. But no, I agree. I think there's a lot of, certainly a lot of stigma. I would also add, though, that we haven't raised expectations among people with disabilities to always believe in themselves and their
Yes.
abilities. And so that's the other part of the conversation that, is important to bring into this, that it's not just what the community has to say or employers have to say, but helping individuals with disabilities and their families really see the possibilities and to have the expectation that employment is an outcome that everyone can have.
Yeah, if I can interject, I've been running a job fair for about 15 or 18 years, so I got my notes here. And it's this Tuesday, September 12th, from 2 to 4:30. And it doesn't cost anything. And I've been trying for 15 years to get agencies to bring clients who may have disabilities to come and just interview for jobs. If you don't get a job, you don't get a job, but you get the experience of trying it. So I'm trying to gin up more diversity to come to this job fair. I've been trying to
that's where
get.
we can partner up.
Absolutely right.
Bring some of our job seekers.
That's exactly
planning
right.
on it. Yep.
This question is for all three of you. I begin with Paul. For what, since you've been around the longest, what progress, if any, has been made in the field of employment?
I'm not as optimistic as a lot of people are about employment. People keep on trying to tell me how the employment situation has improved, and I think it has. We're not static. But there's so much more that needs to be done. I talk to employers all the time, and, well, I'd like to hire them, but I don't know if they can perform. I don't know if we have the facilities. Well, you're supposed to have the facilities. It's the law that you're supposed to make adaptations. So I don't think we've done a very good job of educating the public about how much people can work. And I think that's the big challenge. We now have a lot of people working part-time, 2-3 hours a day. And we have supported employment, which you can talk about a lot more than I can. But I'm concerned that the public looks at the dependency aspect of that employment. When you have a job shadower going with you, people say, oh, can this person work by themselves? We need to break that umbilical cord and have the job shadower leave and let the people be successful or fail. Doesn't matter to me, but they have the opportunity.
I agree with Paul. That's one of our primary goals, is to involve employers a lot more. And we're actually going to have a reverse job fair
I know that.
where the job seekers are going to have booths and employers are going to come by and learn about them and hopefully interview and hire some people.
When
so,
is that?
That's sometime in September. I don't have the exact date in my head.
This is September. Yeah.
Well, sometime this month.
I think it's a Saturday, and I think it's in Coralville.
Well, we're having one, I think
At
you're
the
right, at the
library.
library. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
For I kind of back up your attitude, but I don't understand why it's so prevalent when so many of us now are highly educated.
You know, I have a nephew who's got a college degree, and he's got some real physical involvement and not learning involvement. And he started working at a law office. He went to a special program in one of the schools in New York City, got a job, but nobody ever taught him about work. He's got a college degree, and he started working, and he didn't like it. That's okay. And he quit. And I talked to him, and I said, "You quit? Did you have a job when you quit?" "No, I just quit." Well, you know, with good training, have your ducks in line so you're ready to go on next. So I'm not sure we're doing a good job of taking talented individuals who have the right kind of degrees and teach them, how do you interview? How do you get to your job? What should you I find when I work with a lot of people, they tell me what they can't do. You don't start by saying what you can't do. You start by saying, I'm good at this, good at that. So there's more to educating people for a job than getting the right degree.
Paul, you bring up a good fact. Today, we should be teaching people with disabilities about the available high tech that would aid in jobs.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you have anything to add?
Well, I actually was going to ask Kaylee, since you work with youth, so my background is working with transition age youth and
Okay.
moving them into jobs, and so, I appreciate what Paul is saying, and I think when we look at the statistics, to be academic about it, we haven't seen the needle move very much in disability employment, but I do think when we look at the outcomes that we're seeing for transition age youth, we're just starting to see, sort of the fruits of our labor of getting, into schools earlier, working with students, setting higher levels of expectations for students and families, teaching the very types of skills that Paul is talking about, not just the how to do the job, but how do I get the job? How do I be a good employee? How do I take feedback? All of those things. So I'm curious, Kaylee, sort of what your response was in your work. Whether you see progress being made.
Yeah, I do. I think we have a bigger emphasis on like soft skills training and how to communicate with employers. Even stuff like how do you respond to an email? Have your phone on after you've interviewed for a job, and how do you respond when they call you? And so getting involved with the schools, we teach a STEM class in the summer too. So kind of like you said, Keith, emphasizing kind of different types of jobs too. Not everyone has to work in food service or retail.
That's right.
And we also emphasize education, kind of a dual, what's your school plan and what's your employment plan? We offer a weekly job skills class through Goodwill too, where we kind of go over some of those soft skills things, interviewing, how to keep your job, how to put in 2 weeks notice, how to maybe have something else on the horizon and not just be unemployed, and kind of explaining why also, not just telling people kind of how gaps in employment can really, make an impact on your chances, and those types of things. So yeah, we definitely, I think, seeing some progress in that, and seeing a lot of young kids who have a lot of plans for employment, even in their junior year. They've got big plans for themselves, and that's really great too. So I'm glad that we can kind of be there to help
If I can
them
step
along.
in, we did a research study. Again, I don't want to get too academic about this, but we interviewed parents about their aspirations for their own kids or adults. What do you want from them, expect for them? And we found the aspirations for parents very low.
Yep.
Yeah.
the basic thing we kept on getting was, I want them to be safe. I want them to be happy.
Yes.
And then back to safety. And we kept on pushing, saying, there's nothing wrong with that. We all want that for our own children. But how about independence? How about skills and everything like that? And interestingly enough, most parents never get to that stage. They worry about safety. What's going to happen to so-and-so when I die?
Sure.
And I think those are reasonable things to be concerned about. But we as a society need to be supportive of these parents and
Absolutely
help
agree.
them make that
Yep.
transition, not only kids.
And I think that is such an important point because I do think there is an interesting generational divide. I just finished a research study myself where we saw the same thing. We actually did, we interviewed parents and we interviewed their kids, and their expectations for employment
Were
completely
way different.
opposite.
Yep.
And so it's a really good point that I think we have young kids that have more access and more opportunities. They're demanding more, but their parents may not be there with them. And how do you build that sense of self-advocacy and self-sufficiency to, to be able to go out and get the job that you want, but also what's the supports for parents?
Yes.
Who don't, they grew up in a different era.
Yep. I agree. Like, we definitely try to involve the parents and kind of, try to get them to have higher expectations, because it can be difficult when I sort of maybe am trying to hold the student to a higher expectation than a parent or someone else involved in their life, so.
And I want to say there in this community are some fabulous parent
Oh,
advocates around this
absolutely.
issue. So not meaning to have a broad generalization
No, not
about
at
parents.
all.
But yeah, I do think that there's an interesting divide in various generations as we talk about outcomes and expectations for.
Parents always look, no matter what your children are, they're always your children.
Exactly.
Yep.
And it's I have 3 grown sons, and they're still my kids. So you're protective. And I think when you have a child who grows up and has a disability, regardless of it, even if the kid doesn't have a disability, but you think the kid has a disability, you have a tendency to hover.
Sure.
And there's got to be a way we can help parents say, be concerned, but, cut the cord, let them go out, let them make mistakes. It's okay.
We talk a lot about the dignity of risk.
That's right.
I was going to say, I think it's
Absolutely.
important, like you mentioned, to let people fail at things, because
That's
at
right.
least they're getting that opportunity.
That's the problem. If anyone with a disability feels or health groups, anyone with a non-disability, they can make all the mistakes they want, and no one cares. But although I would say we need to teach these job seekers to be upfront when they're interviewed, to say, if you want me to, in this position, I need this little adaptation.
Just think if all these systems, Goodwill or the public schools, I worked in public schools for years, taught the kids, don't tell me what your disability is, tell me what your abilities are. And if you don't know them, my job is to try to help you discover what your ability. So when I go out for an interview, I can say, I can do this, I can do this, and I can do that. As an employer, I'd say, wow, I'm glad to know that, rather than just looking somebody is in a wheelchair or somebody has a physical thing or doesn't talk correctly, whatever. You got to emphasize the positive.
Yes.
But I agree with you too, Keith, that, it's not something to be ashamed of, that you need, a little accommodation,
Yeah.
And if you want to work for somebody who's going to be supportive of
And
your
you would
needs,
think it would make it easier on the employer
Right.
Yeah.
to know that up front.
Yep.
I think most of us need some sort of accommodation.
I was going to say,
And I
it's,
think
for,
most
it's everybody.
employers appreciate someone that comes in and
Yep.
says, here's how I'm most productive.
Yep.
So it's not about ability or disability. It's here's how I can be most productive to help meet the business's needs.
And I think professionals are guilty of using language that teaches society that people with disabilities are childlike. In my field in special education, the national organization is the Council for Exceptional Children. I worked for 30 years trying to get them to take that word children and make it citizens, and they wouldn't do it. So it's the attitude that, well, these people are always going to be children. That's just wrong. It's just not the way to treat people.
And I can vouch for that because every day I meet somebody that will look down on me in language.
Yes.
Yeah.
I see Keith having coffee in the morning, and it's amazing. Some people have to yell at him. Why? Because, he's in the chair, so he probably can't hear either, so we'll yell. You sit there and you...
Pretty common,
Yeah, it's very
unfortunate
common.
thing,
And you
yeah.
sit there and you say, wait a minute,
Or you change the tone of your voice,
Yeah,
and it's
or you-
not, it's unsettling.
the
Yeah.
words become very small
Yeah.
because he can't...
Sometimes I feel like saying, I can't hear you.
You tell them that. Yeah, that's awesome. Might as well mess with them.
So I know we don't have many minutes left, but
Yeah.
I'd love if you wouldn't mind to tell us a little bit more about what Goodwill offers. Is that okay?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Of course.
I would love to. We have a lot of different services that we offer. We sometimes start with people doing what we call discovery, which is a lot of times for young kids who maybe they want to work, but they don't quite know what they want to do, and kind of just getting to know them, focusing on their interests and their skills, and kind of trying to take that and sort of start to match them up with jobs that they could do. Do job shadows with people, what we call workplace readiness assessments, which is a really cool opportunity where if I had a student who was interested in retail, I would approach different retail businesses in town and kind of make a plan so that that student could try the job out in their business and get paid as just sort of a way to ease into trying out a job. And it can also be a great way for an employer to have a chance to see somebody in action, maybe if they're not the best interviewer. We do job seeking skills training, kind of a lot of that soft skills stuff we talked about, how to prepare for interviews, what to wear, how to follow up, how to communicate with employers, and then we just do kind of job development, working one-on-one with people to do resumes and cover letters, prepare for jobs, attend jobs, talk with employers to try to get some information and educate employers, and then supported employment, which can a lot of times look like job coaching on site, but we really are trying to focus more on building natural supports, which basically just means, if the student has a question, there's no need for them to ask their job coach, kind of guiding them to ask a coworker or a supervisor, kind of the way we would do it. We also do an 8-week occupational skills training, which is cool. In Iowa City, we partner with Walgreens, so they do kind of half the time in the classroom, half the time at Walgreens, learning all the different jobs there. Again, getting just hands-on experience, which can be really good for a lot of people, especially students who haven't tried. It's hard to know what something is like without trying it. And then we do, going a little further, for some people, what we call carved jobs, kind of taking a job that exists and kind of carving out the tasks that that person would excel at, and maybe focusing less on things that are more of a barrier for them. And then customizing sometimes, which is basically creating a job that didn't exist before. I have a guy that he works at a hotel vacuuming the hallways to sort of supplement the housekeepers so they can focus on the rooms. But it wasn't a job that you would have seen posted online. It was just something I worked on with him and the HR manager to create for him. But it's a win-win. It really benefits the hotel, makes it look nice all the time, and then he just gets to rock out on the vacuum for about 10 hours a week. So so that's just some of the stuff that we do, and it's all just focused on the individual, letting them guide the job search, involving their team members, their parents, just I'm always encouraging parents, like, give me job leads. Who do you know? You know, this is a team. This is about all of us. So that's a lot of what we do at Goodwill.
Kelly, do you see the job market changing as more people with disabilities get higher education? What can be done about that?
Do I see the market changing when people get, I mean, I do. I think kind of goes back to what employers maybe expect, you know, if they see education on there. But I just think it's another avenue for students to explore and get skills. You know, I have kids that participate in the VITAL program at Kirkwood, which is kind of some more on-the-job in the classroom training, you know, carpentry, welding, but also technical stuff, STEM-related classes. So I definitely think that.
I'm amazed at this job fair I was talking about. How many people come in, not folks with disabilities, just people walking in, and they're asked, well, what's your social security number? They don't have a clue. And, and they have no idea how to find out. And it's simple things like this, which you know the employer is just going to turn the switch and say, I don't want this person working for me. So there's so much that we can.
And we do work with, that's good. That's part of kind of the job seeking, or, you know, make sure you have a valid ID, because when you get hired, they're going to want 2 forms of, you know, reporting your
know your phone number.
Yes, know your phone number. Who are your references? Just kind of be prepared for all of that. Yeah, that's a good point. We definitely, all those little bits and pieces,
Having a professional voicemail message.
Yes, and professional, like, emails, you know. I usually make the students get a new one that's just their name, you know.
For the audience convenience, would you tell us where the fair is, and what time it is, and what day?
Gee, almost like I trained you to do that, Keith. It's Tuesday, September 12th, from 2 to 4:30 at the Iowa City Recreation Building. And it's walk-in. You don't need to register. The employers will be there sitting behind tables, and they have jobs. And we have 30 employers that have said they're going to be there, which is the most we've had in many, many years. So I would encourage you to try. You can't lose by trying.
Well, as usual, these shows go very quick, and we're coming to the end of the first segment. And I would like to thank Dr. Reddish, Kelly Hart, and Julie Christian for a very interesting insight. And I hope everyone out there has gained just a little more knowledge. Thank you. Have a good week.
Thanks for the invite.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.